we're here. You're probably already there. Just took us a couple extra minutes today.
So, showing there.
Tell me you're there. I'm sure y'all were waiting for us. Technology can run smoothly for 6 weeks, and then, we gotta have a glitch every once in a while. Hi, Alicia. Technology is so fun. Nope, we should be very thankful for technology. That's how I get to know Sophia's out there, and Nick's out there, and I can pretend you're sitting here because I know you're watching me. So it's been a wonderful thing for these 7-8 weeks we've all been at home. And hopefully today will go smoothly. We're having clay day today. This is our big lump of clay that was in the activity bag. So we're doing a clay day today. And we're going to knock on wood that everything's going to go smoothly today. Last time we tried our clay project, we kind of had a little snafu with our video. But we've become pros since then. So we are going to have a perfect day today. We're going to make a very cool bird bath, bird feeder. You can get as creative as you would like with it. I just finished mine, so mine still looks wet like yours will look. This is my little bird bath. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. I don't know if mine will be a bird bath or I could put some bird seed in it. This is my little bird bath, bird feeder. Over here, Joey's showing me where to put it. Like this, Joey. Joey's my director. He's always telling me to do this, do that. He's always rolling his eyes at me. So see my little bird bath?
Just hold it still.
Oh, he just wants you to hold it still, and he'll move the camera. This is our little bird bath or bird feeder we're going to make today. So we can get creative. I added leaves to mine. I've got a little bird perched down inside. We're going to make ourselves a really, really, really big bowl. So if you don't want to perch a bird inside yours, it could even turn into a cereal bowl. We're going to glaze them so they'll be sealed and could hold water outside or bird seed. So if you don't want it to go outdoors, you could turn it into a cereal bowl for yourself or an ice cream bowl. It's big enough. Look how big our little bowl turned out. So we have a big wad of clay today. While everybody's getting signed in, I'm going to put my clay down. I'm going to tell you some of the things you're going to need to gather there at your house today. This is what we need out of your activity bag. And since we couldn't put the whole pottery studio in your activity bag, you guys have to find some things at your house to substitute for what we usually use here in the studio. Have I got some people logged on?
Yeah, Nick, Patrick, okay. Lydia.
So Lydia and Patrick and Nick, people. They're used to having tools here in the studio.
Sarah,
so we're
Elizabeth,
going to
Caroline.
Substitute some things at your house. Clay, for those of you that haven't been here at the studio and done clay with me, clay is really fun to do. Hello. It washes out of clothes, so don't worry if it gets on your clothes, but it might be nice to put a smock on. I've got a towel to wipe my hands on, so I'm not wiping them on my clothes. This is my friend Marvin gave me this towel. So clay will wash out of your clothes. There's only 3 things clay won't stick to. So this is a project today that you can't do on top of mom's table. If you've been working on a card table or a TV tray or the kitchen table or the kitchen counter, you want to put something down. Clay sticks to everything except for 3 things. It doesn't stick to material. That's the reason it'll wash out of your clothes. So if you have an old dish towel or an old t-shirt that you want to put down on the table, that'd be a good surface to work on. I'm working on a big canvas mat here because that's material, like a jean jacket. So an old t-shirt, an old undershirt, an old dish towel, you could work on top of that. Clay won't stick to material. It won't stick to paper. So if you've got a big piece of old newsprint, I'm afraid all the ink from the newsprint will get on your clay, but that won't hurt it. We're going to dunk them in glaze for you so you won't see all that newsprint stuck on your clay. so it won't stick to paper. If you're a baker or have parchment paper in the kitchen, a big piece of parchment paper would work. You could work with the clay on top of the parchment paper. That would be ideal. And it won't stick to other dry clay. So those are the three things that clay doesn't stick to: material, paper, or other dry clay. So if you happen to have, like a big plaster mold, you could work on top of that. Chances are you're not going to have dry clay in your house. So think of paper. Even if you had a scrap of drywall, that works. So you need something to put down on the table. We need something to keep your hands moist. So I've got a sponge in a little cup here. My sponge is soaking wet because all we're going to do with the water here, it's not to pour on the clay. We don't really want our clay to get too soggy, but you need something to tap your hands on. See how it makes my hand wet? When you're working with the clay sucks moisture, your hands suck moisture out of the clay. The material your clay sitting on is going to suck moisture out of the clay. The air is going to suck moisture out of clay. So tapping your hands on the sponge like this is going to make your hands feel better because they're going to have dry clay all over them. But this also helps put a little moisture back in the clay. So find yourself, if you've got a sponge, that's great. Get the sponge soaking wet and put it on a plate or a little inside a bowl. Because if you tap your hands on the sponge, we don't want all the water to squish out of the sponge all over your kitchen counter. So get a sponge, get it soaking, dripping wet. You don't want to wring it out. Put it in a bowl. If you don't have a sponge handy, go find a wash rag. Get the wash rag soaking wet, put it in a cereal bowl, and you can tap your hand on the wash rag. So something that's wet for your hands, something to put on the table, and then find a pencil you've been using. Now, the pencil's going to get clay all over it, so you might not want to get your favorite pencil. It'll wash off the pencil. But we're going to use this pencil to make some little designs and make some lines on our clay. So you want kind of a dull pencil, and that's about all we'll need. Something to put out on the table, something to keep your hands moist, and find yourself an old pencil, okay? Once you've got that, we are ready to start. So give us some thumbs up if you got something to cover up the surface of your table with. Don't forget to find yourself an old pencil, kind of dull pencil, and make sure you got your sponge. Joey's going to move the camera in, and we're going to start working with our clay. Okay. Oh, I need to move my stool for Joey. I'm always having to move my stool for Joey. He's one of those very picky directors. Okay. Am I in a good spot? Okay. Can you see my clay that we've already done? I'm going to put it up here in the corner. Will that work, Joey? Mm-hmm. Okay. Bird's beak had a little fuzzy on it. Okay. So I got my sponge here. I'm going to put my sponge over on the table so that I don't accidentally get anything wet on my canvas. This is my canvas. I got it on the brown side because we're using brown clay. Mr. Mark had your brown clay all wrapped up in saran wrap. So what we need to do is pull this plastic off. It might be trickier than you think. This one's pulling off pretty easy. But find where the tape is, pull that plastic off. It's kind of cool to just try to unwrap the plastic because the plastic's a good thing to keep our scraps of clay in. And we're actually going to pull some of this clay off and keep it to make some decorations on our bowl there. So unwrap your clay, pull all this plastic off. There we go. Got my lump of clay here. I'm going to keep my plastic because this is what I'm going to stick my scrap of clay in. Can we see this over here, Joey? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll get rid of this scrap. Okay, so we got this big, giant cylinder of clay here. Our cylinder of clay, I think, is about 2.5 inches thick here. Remember last time we did clay, we had like a hockey puck size. So what I want you to do is we're actually going to pull some of this clay off and save it to use for some pieces that we're going to make to go on our bowl. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is pull some of this clay off. Now we don't have to be real particular. If you were here in the studio, would use one of those wire cutters and just slice right through it. But since you're not here and we don't have one of our wire cutters, I'm going to have you just pull some off. What I want you to do is think of pulling maybe this much. I'm going to draw a little line here. And you could draw yourself a line if you want. About a quarter of the clay. Yeah, if we divided the clay in half, and we got about another half. So I want you to pull about a quarter of the clay off. And if it's helpful, you can take your pencil just like this. Draw a little line all the way around. Like that. And we're going to pull this part of the clay off. Okay? Does that make sense?
You could use a kitchen knife and cut through it.
If you've got a kitchen knife and Mom doesn't mind you using the kitchen knife, or like a dinner knife, you could use the knife to slice through. But let me show you how easy it is to just pull it with your hands. I want to pull this much off, so I'm going to take my thumb. I'm going to hold it in one hand. I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to start pushing that clay off the top like this. I'm just taking my thumb and pushing right across and pulling all this clay off. There we go. I'm just going to pull it off till it's kind of flat. There we go. So you don't need a knife. We don't need our wire cutters. You don't have to be here in the studio with me. We did that pretty easy. If you guys got about a quarter of your clay pulled off. So we kind of look like that. I got kind of a messy top. That bunch of clay that you pulled off, just wad it up like this. Put it in your plastic you just pulled off and kind of wrap your plastic around it. Put it over to the side there. That's going to keep it from drying out. The air dries clay out. Our hands dry clay out. Your mat dries clay out. So we don't need to leave it out if we don't have to. So has everybody kind of got down to this part right here? And my hands, can you see the clay on my hands? They're already feeling a little dry, so I'm going to tap them on my sponge over here. See, I get nice moisture back on my hands. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to take this big, thick hockey puck and we're going to turn it into a ball. Now, we can do that by just tapping it in our hands like this. We can roll it around on our mat. The more I roll it on the mat, the more dried out it's going to get. One thing that we can do is tap it on the mat. Keep tapping your hands on your wet rag or your sponge. And we can tap it on the mat just lightly. I can tap where I've got those kind of square corners. I can turn my clay and tap it, turn it and tap it, turn it and tap it, turn it and tap it. I'm tapping those corners out, aren't I? So keep turning it and tapping it till it's starting to get into more like a ball shape. Kind of looks like a big rock or a boulder. So I'm getting away from that flat shape on the ends and getting into more of a round shape. I'm going to wet my hands again and now try it in my hands. I can pat it with my hands like this. We're going to get our exercise today with our clay. This is a big wad of clay. I don't think I ever recall us using this big of a wad of clay to make a pot before. We're going to make a really big pot. Okay. How's your clay doing? Are we getting into a ball shape? Now this is the end where I'm kind of pushing it towards each other. Two things we don't want to ever do with clay is trap air inside of it, because when we fire it in our really hot kiln, it will make it blow up. And we don't want to get the clay too thick. If I tried to put this wad of clay into the kiln, it would blow up. Can anybody guess why it would blow up? It would blow up into a zillion million little pieces. And it's because This clay is so thick, such a big wad of clay, that no matter how long I let it sit out in the sun or just sit here in our studio, the clay deep down inside the center of this would never dry out. It would still be wet. It doesn't matter how long we let it sit, it would never dry out. So when we make something out of clay, it's kind of like that Goldilocks and the Three Bears story. It can't be too thick. It can't be too thin because then it crumbles and falls apart. It's got to be just the right thickness. This is way too thick. So I don't want to trap air and I don't want to have my clay too thick. So we're going to take this ball and we're going to pinch it out into a nice thin bowl. We're going to go from this shape to this nice bowl shape. And you can see when we look at the sides of my bowl, how thin the sides of my bowl are. Joey's showing me how to turn my bowl. See how thin the sides of my bowl are? And they're this thin all the way down to the bottom. All the way down in here. When I put my thumb and finger together, it's nice and thin. So we're going to go from this thick ball to this thin bowl. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take the ball, and since this is so big, I'm just going to put it down on my mat. And what I want to do is take my finger, and I kind of want to find the center of the ball. Has everybody kind of got a ball formed? Give us some thumbs up. Is everybody caught up? We ready to try making a pot? Mr. Joey's not nodding or doing anything.
There's a delay, Mom.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. You guys have like 20 seconds after I say something before you hear me. So give me some thumbs up if we're ready to start pinching out our ball. We got some thumbs up? Okay, what you want to do is kind of look down right on the top of this ball and try to find near the center. We don't want to put our finger way over here. I don't want to put my finger way over here. I want to kind of find the center, which if I put my finger down here, I kind of got an even distance all the way around. So I'm thinking that's going to be my center, okay? So see how that looks like it's in the middle of my ball here? Can you guys see that? I'm going to take my finger, my thumb, whatever's easiest for you. If you've got really small hands, this might be hard. So if you got a big brother, big sister, if mom or dad's there, ask them to wiggle a thumb or finger down for you. What we want to do is wiggle your finger all the way, almost all the way to the bottom. We don't want to poke your finger through. If we poke our finger through, then the water won't stay in there, okay? So you found the center. I want you to twist your finger back and forth. It's probably easier if you pick up the ball, hold it in one hand, twist your finger back and forth like this. It's easier to push your finger down if you twist it back and forth. And you're going straight down towards the bottom of this ball. When you can kind of feel the pressure, oh, I feel my finger down near the bottom there, then stop. Now, your finger might feel like it's kind of stuck. Look, my finger's stuck in the ball of clay. But if I wiggle my finger back and forth like this, there, I'll be able to get my finger out. Okay, so you should have a hole all the way down. Now, mine's not perfect. I can tell right now I got more clay on this side than I do on this side. So I wasn't too good at finding my center, was I? But that's okay. While we pinch out the pot, we'll be able to even it out. I'm going to show you lots of ways to fix when sides get too thin, if they start falling apart, what we do. And the fun thing about clay is don't get too frustrated. If it's not working, if all of a sudden your pot starts falling apart, if all of a sudden it gets too thin in one side and it sags and gets a hole in it, all we'd have to do is scrunch it back up into a ball, moisten your hands, scrunch it back up into a ball, moisten your hands some more, and start from this point right here. So you can't ruin it. Clay is very forgiving. You can start over again and squish your clay up a zillion times if you want to. So don't get frustrated if it's not working. Most of the time when we make pinch pots, sometimes the first one doesn't work. Here's how we're going to go from this, which looks like a hornet's nest, or kind of looks like Carolina wren nests. We have one of these at our house. We're going to go from here, where we have sides that are super thick,
to here where it's really big and our sides are very thin. Okay, here's the most important thing to remember when you make a pinch pot. Do not, got that? Do not pinch up like this at this top edge. We're not pinching from the bottom up like this. We never want to pinch on this rim, okay? Never pinch on the top rim. What we're doing is we're pressing the sides and the bottom in. We're not pulling up to here, we're pressing in. So what I'm gonna do is put my thumb down inside. Oh, my thumb's fatter than my finger was. I'm gonna wiggle my thumb down there. I'm gonna use my fingers, my thumb's deep down inside there. I'm gonna press my fingers like it was pressing against my thumb. This is the part we're wanting to pinch. We're pressing in these sides, not up here at the top, okay? Let me show you that again. We're pressing in this part, the sides of our ball. We're not pressing up here at the rim, okay? So if it's easy, you can hold it this way. Press, I'm gonna turn it a little bit and press. It's turning just like a wheel. I'm just gonna keep going around. And I'm pressing my fingers against my thumb that's inside my pot. See how when I'm pressing, it's starting to get bigger? You can put it down like this too. If you want to press this way, that's fine. You can just keep turning it around on your mat like this. Put your fingers on the outside and your thumb on the inside and press. Turn and press. Turn. Turn and press. You're just going to keep doing that. Your sides are really thick. You want to really try to press way down at this part on the side. Try to get your thumb or your fingers way down to the bottom and be pressing way down here. See how my fingers are way down here at the bottom of my pot? Pressing against my thumb down there. We want to press that part up. You'll start discovering, like, you could close your eyes and just feel with your fingers. And as you turn the clay around, some places will feel like they're getting thinner. And then some places, ooh, I just came across a really thick part down at the bottom there. So you can close your eyes and your fingers and your thumb will tell you where are the thick parts, where are the thin parts, where do I need to press more. If it feels like a really thin spot, don't press there. Skip over that spot. Go around. Okay, I've been pressing mostly way down here. I'm going to move my fingers up. I'm going to press up in the top of my side now a little bit. And I'm going to show you what happens to the clay. Clay is really funny. My clay is nice and moist. It's not too dried out. But look what's happening on my sides. I'm going to let Mr. Joey see if he can see. Do you see what's happening on my sides here? Are you starting to get some cracks like this? See how the clay is starting to crack here? It doesn't mean my clay is too dry, although it is drying out a little. You need to tap your hands. While we keep doing all this pinching, you want to keep tapping your hands. But this is not because I dried the clay out and it's going to crumble apart. This is because the clay is kind of lazy. The clay actually has a memory, like you remember things. The clay remembers it was nice and cozy and comfortable in its nice little solid ball. And I'm forcing it to get into a shape that it wasn't planning on. So the clay actually has its own little personality here, and it's getting mad and it's cracking because it wants to go back to being the cozy little ball. I'm making it stretch out. Have you ever tried to stretch your legs out and do the splits? It's kind of what my clay is doing. It's kind of complaining at me. Now, you can tap your hands and you can spread water across those cracks and it'll make them look like they go away. But all that's going to happen is when this water dries, the crack's still going to be there. So what you want to do is brace your hand for some support on the outside of your clay. Take your hands and you want to really pull the clay across the surface. You want to pull a little clay. You can use your thumb, you can use your fingers, but we really want to pull the clay across itself. That makes the clay heal its cracks. So it helps to have your fingers moist. But we want to go around and we want to pull the clay across the cracks So I'm getting a little bit of clay, not a lot, but I'm getting a little bit of clay pulled back and forth across the cracks. So if you start getting cracks, stop, moisten your fingers, and go back and forth across clay. Do you see how I don't have my clay really slimy wet? We don't want to just drench it in water, but we want to keep it nice and moist so you can pull the clay across itself. Now, my ball is starting to kind of take the shape of a pot, isn't it? Look at, it's kind of looking like a pot, right? My pot's got a very small circle in the middle. It's also very thick. You can tell how thick my sides still are. This is how thin we want to get. So I'm going to keep working on thinning it out some more. I'm going to let it just sit like this. I'm going to put my thumb back inside. I'm going to press with my fingers. I can start pressing to the top of the side like this, but see how I'm pressing the side? I'm not pinching up here at the rim, but I can come press my side like this. It kind of opens my little rim up here. Okay. So now you can really kind of see into my bowl. I'm starting to get some cracks here, so I'm going to moisten my fingers.
Big crack on the inside.
Okay. So we're going to go around here. Joey says, oh, can you kind of see right here? Looks like a crack. See this little line on the inside? It's actually, I think, where my clay kind of folded over itself. But I want to come in with my fingers and I want to smooth that out. I want to smooth, see how my thumb's pulling the clay across that crack? Okay. Now my sides are really thick still, so I'm going to keep going around, smoothing my cracks. I'm pushing, I'm holding out here, and I'm pushing on the inside to thin it out a little bit. Hold your hand out here. Take your other hand, you can push on the inside to thin it out a little bit. I'm still never ever pinch the little edge like this, okay? I'm gonna come around and smooth that side out a little bit more. Now, if you're starting to have a catastrophe and it's starting to fall apart, scrunch it back up, moisten your fingers really good, scrunch it back up into a ball, and start again. Oh, I'm sorry. I was bumping Mr. Joey's camera. Gotta move my big foot. Okay, so my bowl's starting to thin out. It's getting a little better thickness here. Still a little thick back here. It's also very tall, isn't it? So I'm going to show you a way we're going to change its shape a little bit. But I'm going to continue pinching out a little bit, taking my thumb and my finger here, pinching out this really thick side. Really, my pot's really thick right here. So I'm going to put my thumb and finger way down near the bottom. I can use this whole hand in here and this whole hand out here now because my pot's gotten big enough. This is how they used to make pots long, long time ago, before they invented wheels and slab rollers and all kinds of stuff. Our native Indians just figured out that the clay in the ground, if they threw it down in their fire pit, would get really hard, changes the makeup of the clay, and this was a way they could hold water. So how's yours looking? Mine's starting to look thinner on the sides, see? I kind of want to get the sides even, and I'm going to put my fingers down here. This is where, down in this part right here, which is this part out here, this is where everybody leaves their pots too thick. Down here, you can kind of see my side goes down, but it slopes in, and out here it goes straight down. So this part right in here is really thick. We don't want to leave the clay too thick. If we've got a spot too thick, it's going to blow up in the kiln. So I'm going to stick my thumb. See how I can do this so you can see. I'm going to stick my thumb way down to the bottom there. This is where you might need somebody with longer, bigger hands that can reach all the way to the bottom of your pot. If you can't reach way down to the bottom of the sides like that, ask somebody who's got a little longer fingers, little bigger hand if they can reach the bottom of your pot for you, because we don't want to leave really thick clay down there. Okay, that's a little better. I'm going to turn my pot all the way around, checking all my little spots. This side's kind of thick over here, so I'm going to press it out a little bit more. See how I get a few little cracks going there? So I want to pull the clay across itself. So I'm checking all over, see if I've got any thick spots. And at this point, you might find some spots that have gotten too thin. It's really easy when you're pinching a pot to get some spots that get too thin. I'm going to show you what we can do if you get a thin spot. Okay, I'm going to look around, see if I can see any thin spots. I'm holding the outside like this in a curve, because I want my bowl to stay curved. I'm taking my thumb and I'm pushing around like this. Can you see that? Usually my hand's in the way. Can we see it, Joey?
Well, you're down inside a bowl.
Let's see if I hold it like this. If I put it on an angle, this is sitting down on your mat, but I'm holding my hand out here. I'm taking my thumb like this and pushing it against my hand out there. So it's smoothing up my inside really nicely. It's also letting me feel if there's a really thin spot. Okay? Like I have a very thin spot right here. This feels really thin. You might have a thin spot that's come all the way up to the top. I'm purposely making a thin spot. Don't do this. If you've got a thin spot, like see how thin my little edge got here? Despite all my best intentions, my rim got really thin right here. But that's okay. If the rest of your pot's looking good and we don't need to scrunch it back up again, you can fix thin spots like that. Watch. See this really thin spot? I need to make it thicker again. So it's like these. So I'm just going to push that part together a little bit. Kind of folds over itself a little bit. And then I'm going to smooth it out with my hands. So you can push the clay back in. Force it back together there and make a thicker spot. Okay? So if you've got a side that started falling apart in one place, see what the outside looks like? So I support on the inside and I can smooth that up. So if you got a thin spot, fold it over. Force that clay back, push that clay back together so it gets a little thicker. Okay, now we got our bowl like this. I want mine to look flattened out a little bit more. So again, we're going to moisten our hands. Got your hands nice and moistened. I'm going to push out at just out here at the top. Not trying to thin it out. I'm just pushing it out. Push this out. See how many times I've moistened my hand? I'm keeping my hand nice and moistened. I'm just going to flare my bowl out a little bit. My clay is so nice and soft that it lets me just kind of push it around a little bit. That's that thin spot. When I did this, that thin spot started to come apart. Look what it did. Did yours do that? If you got a thin spot and it opens up with a crack like that, I'm just going to fold it back over itself. Hook it back together. Okay. Okay. Now, at this point, you may have needed to scrunch your bowl back up. You might still be working on thinning out. That's all okay. We are positive our video is going to save to Facebook. And so if you're frustrated, if you need more time, don't worry about it. You can pull the video back up and keep turning it back on and doing it again. But I'm going to show you how we're going to finish out our little bowl here. I flared it out. I'm just gently pushing my clay out like this. Not pushing near the bottom, just gently pushing it out, which is making my bowl get wider and wider. Got a crack right here. Mr. Joey's helping me find all my little cracks. So if you see cracks on the outside, you want to come and pull the clay across itself. Don't just get it wet. Okay, my bowl is kind of rounded out. Now, you see how the top of this bowl folds over itself? I'll show you a trick how we did that. I'm going to put my finger right underneath where I want it to fold over. I'm going to moisten my hands a little bit. And I'm going to push the clay. I'm going to move my finger. I'm just going to keep gently, very gently pushing the clay out over my finger. I'm laying my finger down right underneath where I want the rim to come out. Keep moistening your finger. If you get cracks like this, we're going to pull the clay across itself, fix the crack. I'm going to let it lay right over my finger there. There we go. Now I'm starting to look more like my bowl. Okay? At this point, if you want to just flare your rim out all the way around and have a beautiful cereal bowl, you will have made your own cereal bowl or an ice cream bowl. Doesn't that look like a good size to scoop ice cream in? If you want to keep it right like that, you can. If you want us to glaze it into a bird bath you can put outside, and you want to put a bird in it just to show the birds, hey, you can come to this water or this bird seed's here for you. You can take your lump of clay here. I made some leaves. I don't know if you can see my leaves. See my pretty leaves on the back of my bowl here? I made some leaves. I made a bird to go on the inside. I used all these little pieces of clay, and I made some decorations for my bowl. I like my leaves, and I got a kind of goofy little bird on the inside there. So I'm going to turn that around so we can see. Here's what you can do. You can use this lump of clay to make whatever decoration you want on your bowl. You just got to remember a couple things. It can't be too thin. We can't pinch that clay so thin that it's like paper, because it will just crumble. I guarantee as the clay dries, it will just crumble off. And we can't make a big lump so thick. I can't like put something this thick in my bowl there. It will never dry. So what I did, I wanted to make a little bird. So I'm going to show you how to make a bird. Oops, gotta sit in here. Sorry, Mr. Joey. We'll put our bowl there. I'm going to take a lump about this big, because remember, we don't want any part of our bird to be too thick. We don't want him to blow up. Now, this clay's been sitting in my plastic, so it didn't dry out too much, but it's a little dry. So I'm going to get my hands wet. I'm going to scrunch this back up into a ball with my wet hands. See my wet hands? We're making a mess, aren't we? This is one of those messy projects. Okay? So I've squished my clay into a little lump. I've got some moisture back in the clay here. And I'm going to make it into kind of a fat little sausage. I'm going to roll it between my hands a little bit. Make it into a fat little sausage. Remember how I said the clay can't be too thick? This is about as thick as we want a piece of clay to be. So I got a short, fat little sausage here. If you were looking at my hands, I wouldn't want it any thicker than my thumb. Of course, I have short, stubby, fat fingers and thumb. So your thumb's probably a lot skinnier than my thumb. But you don't want it much thicker than this. I'm going to start by making that bird out of this one piece of clay. When you stick pieces of clay together, it always creates a weak joint. Wherever I've stuck a piece on another piece, there's always that risk that piece is going to fall off when it dries. Clay likes to shrink when it dries. So think about putting two pieces together, and then as they start to dry, they want to shrink up. They want to shrink away from each other. So it's always better to sculpt. We're going to turn into a sculptor like Michelangelo here. It's always better to sculpt something out of one solid piece. So I'm going to pretend this is my whole bird. I'm going to make his head and his tail and his beak out of this one piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I've got some moisture on my hands, because we're really going to push this clay into shapes it's not used to, okay? Now, don't get it too slimy. I almost got a little too much water on there. If your clay gets too slimy, just roll it on your mat or your t-shirt or your towel or whatever you've got there. That'll suck some of the moisture out. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do Did I bump it? There. I'm going to pretend this is his head. And I'm going to go, okay, if I want his head to be sitting up, I need to kind of turn this. Think like you're making a balloon animal. So I'm going to very gently turn the end of my fat sausage up like this. Okay? Look like a bird yet? Not too much, huh? Okay? So we turned up the end. Now, the bird's neck and head is usually not the same fat size as his belly here, right? So right here, I want his neck to get a little skinnier. So I'm going to take my fingers, I'm going to pinch it in just a little. Don't pinch too much. You'll decapitate your bird. Not a good thing. We're not those murder hornets. Is that what I heard about on the news? Yeah, we don't want to decapitate the bird. So I just very gently, just a little bit, made his neck come in just a little bit up there at the top, okay? Still doesn't look like a bird, does it? Okay, instead of having his head sticking straight up in the sky, I'm going to turn his head like this, very gently again. We can't force the clay too fast. You make the clay move too fast, it gets mad and falls apart on you. I'm going to gently turn his head so faces this way. Hey, that's looking pretty good, right? Now, when you're sculpting, you got to think you're making something three-dimensional. So from this side, it looks really good, right? Let's turn and look at it straight on. He's a little crooked, isn't he? So don't forget, you want to turn your clay and look at it from all the angles. We're trying to make sure he's got a round head here. So look at it and look at it from this side. There we go. So turn him all around. Look at it from all directions. Make sure he's kind of got a round head. And here's how we're going to make his beak. We're going to take the end of his head here. It's a little pointy already. We're going to take our thumb and our finger. I'm just going to pull it out like this. Just very gently, like I'm pulling it out into a V. I'm going to pull it from the top and the bottom too. Now, look what's happening. Remember how I talked about it can't be too thin? Look at the end of his beak. Oh my gosh. But that's okay. You know what's going to happen? We're pulling this beak out. Like this. Better, Joey? We're pulling his beak out. I'm just going to pull the end that got too skinny. I'm just going to break the end off. I keep pulling it out a little bit more. And if it starts getting too long, I just break the end off a little bit. There we go. Okay. When you got a beak size you like, be sure and look at it from all directions. When I look straight on, can you see it straight on? His beak's kind of crooked, isn't it? So be sure and turn him all directions so you can straighten him up. Look at him from the top. See how he looks from the top? Make sure underneath. So look at him from all directions because you got to think three-dimensionally when you're sculpting. Okay, he's kind of looking like a bird. I have to sit him so he's got kind of a flat bottom there. He looks like a duck. Joey says he looks like a duck. Well, a duck could be in my bird bath. Maybe this is a little miniature duck. Now, I made a big tail. I think I made up a species of bird over here. I was just having fun. So the same way, if we want to turn a tail up, I'm just going to come back here. Let me turn around so you can see. I'm just going to take my thumb and my finger. I'm going to pull a little out. I'm going to put my thumb right on the duck's back. I'm going to pull the clay up against my thumb. Make a tail. Remember, we don't want the tail to get too thin. And see how it cracked a little bit here? So I'll come in and fix my crack. I'll look at it. It's kind of a lopsided tail. What do you think? But I kind of like it. So there's my bird, my duck, my miniature something. I can take the point of my pencil and I can give him two little eyes. Give him a little eye here and a little eye here. There we go. I can use the point of my pencil to give him some feathers, make some wings on the side of him. Now, if you did clay before with us, this is what I refer to as fuzzies. See these tiny little pieces of clay that come when you draw with your pencil or your stick? Try to take those fuzzies off. when fuzzies get fired in the kiln, they get really sharp. So if you got any fuzzies, knock them off. I could put some feathers in his tail here. Take my pencil and just put some lines in here so it looks like feathers on his tail. So I'd see the feathers on the back side too, wouldn't I? There we go. Nice little bird. I want my bird, if you want your bird to sit down in your bird bath, we need to, typically we score and slip and blend. Slip is like a slimy wet clay that we use to join parts together. It just helps hold them like Elmer's glue. Our clay is really soft, so we're gonna kind of substitute since we didn't send slip with you. I'm gonna decide where I want to put my bird. I might try a couple spots. I don't want him right in the middle, but I could put bird seed and water around him. So anywhere you put him would work. I could put him over on the side here. Please do not put him up on the rim because it'll be too easy for him to fall off. So pick a spot you're gonna put him, and what I want you to do then, when you know that spot, I want you to take your pencil and on the bottom of the bird that's gonna attach there, I want you to score it. That means rough it up. That means take your pencil, make some lines going one way, and then turn and go crisscross across that. And see how it's making all these little fuzzies? This is the only time I want you to make fuzzies. All these little bits of clay are gonna make it easy to grip when we put it down here. And then wherever you were gonna put it in here, do the same thing. I'm gonna make some crisscrosses right here. Crisscross, 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 crisscross. I'm roughing up the clay, okay? And then I'm gonna put them together. Oh, thank you, Joey. Before you stick it on there, get your fingers really moistened. Put some water on the bottom of the duck. Get your fingers really wet and put some water down there. Okay, this is gonna help them grip. Okay, you ready? We're all roughed up, we're all roughed up, we're wet, we're wet. Here we go. Other hand. Stick him down there. Wiggle him in where we put all that roughness. Push them, really press them together. Okay, that'll help him stay in there. You can take your finger and smooth up around him if you made a mess. There we go. And my little bird is swimming in the bird feeder or the bird bath. Let me show you real quick how to make a leaf if you'd like to add some leaves. Again, don't worry if you're not done with your bird, it's okay. We promise, knock on wood, Joey, that the video is going to save. You can pull it up and come back later and try things. I just want to show you some things so you'll be able to pause and come back and look at how to make a leaf. Now, I pulled off another wad of clay. I'm going to make some tiny leaves. So I'm going to get a wad about this big maybe, okay? I'm going to moisten my fingers again. And I'm going to smooth my little clay up into a little ball here. Going to squish it and scrunch it between my fingers and get it nice and smooth. I got a lot of moisture on it. Going to wiggle it between my hands. Look how messy my hands are getting. Some of you will like this. Some of you that don't like messy hands will be anxious to go wash your hands. It's okay to go wash your hands during it. You might fill up a little bucket with water. This would probably be better for Mom. If your hands are getting really gooey and yucky and you just got to wash them off, fill up a little bucket with water and swish your hands in the bucket. That'll get most of the clay off, okay? Instead of washing it down Mom's sink. Okay, we got a little wad of clay. I'm going to shape it into a teardrop. So wiggled it into a little ball, and I'm just taking my thumb and my finger and I'm pulling one end out like this into a little point. Remember what I said about not getting too skinny. So don't pull this out into a paper thin point. See how thick my point is? And then I'm going to press it between my thumb and my finger like this. So I'm going to press it between my thumb and my finger until I flatten it to like a pancake. Okay? Instead of rolling it on my big slab roller or using a rolling pin, I'm just going to flatten it between my thumb and my finger. Do I want to flatten it like that? Nope, because then it would be paper thin. Okay? So flatten it to like a pancake. Pancakes, we're not going for a crepe or a crepe. We're going for a pancake. About that thick. See how thick it is? Can you tell how thick it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I got a kind of teardrop shape here. I'm going to take my pencil. I'm going to make some lines so it looks like a leaf. Those little veins that we sometimes see in a leaf. There we go. And I'm going to decide where I want to put a leaf. Couple things I have to tell you. You can't stick it on like this. There's just not enough surface there to hold my clay. It will fall off. So what we want to do is pick a spot where maybe just a little tip of it hangs off. See, I just have little bits of my leaves sticking off the clay. So this gives me all this surface right here where I can do the same thing I did with the duck. Here we go. I'm going to take my pencil. I'm going to rough it up on the back. So I'm going to make lines like this, lines like this, crisscross, 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 crisscross. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing right where I'm going to put it. Crisscross, 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 crisscross. Then what do we do next? You got to add some water. So get your fingers all nice and drenched. Put some water on there. Put some water on here. Okay, and then we're going to press, remember? I'm going to put it right where I want it, and I'm going to press it against there. I'm putting my hand under the rim. I can't just press this way, I'll break my bowl. So put your hand underneath where you're pressing. Press on the top of it. There we go. Now when you're pressing, you might have pressed some of your lines out. So you can always come back on here then. Put your lines back on if you don't see them. You can blend a little bit at the edge here and make sure they're going to stick together. Okay. So that gives me a pretty little leaf. I could make a little trio of leaves there. Get your clay nice and moistened. Moisten your fingers really good. We'll make one more, maybe we'll make 2 leaves. I'll make 2 little tiny ones. I'm going to make tiny ones. See my little piece of clay? Gonna get it nice and wet. Shape it into kind of a ball shape. And I'm going to take one end of it with my thumb and my finger, make it into a point, and then I'm going to press it between my thumb and my finger to flatten it out. Remember, this is going to be a fat leaf. Look at it. This is going to be a really flat leaf. Fat leaf. I'm flattening it to the size of a pancake. Okay, so we're kind of pancake size here. Okay. I'm going to draw my lines on my leaf. Veins. And then on the back, we're going to crisscross, 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 crisscross. Remember, we're going to rough it up. Crisscross, 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 crisscross. I think I'm going to put my leaf right next to this one. So I'm going to crisscross right here. Crisscross, 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 criss. Get your hands really soaking wet here. Put some water on. There we go. I got good water there. Put some water. Okay, and then we're going to stick this leaf on. Put your hand underneath your bowl on this side. You have to have something to press against. Okay, press it in really good there. And then I might go back and put my lines back on there. I really don't see my lines anymore on that one, do I? Put some little veins back in my leaf. And I had this one little leaf left because you know Miss Ginny, I can't do anything that's an even number, right? So how many leaves do we have? I have 2. So I got to make a 3rd one because I just got to do things in an odd number, don't I? So I've got in this little teardrop shape. I used my thumb and my finger and made a point. You could make a whole bowl that just has a whole rim of leaves going around it. That would be very pretty. What we're going to do, you be thinking of how you're going to decorate. You don't have to put a bird. You could put leaves all around the edge if you want. You could make designs on the sides of your bowl if you want. This is going to be your bowl. You can do whatever you like with it. We are going to fire them for you, and we will have them sealed. They will be dunked in a color, like a pale blue or green. When you come, what we need you to do is bring the clay to us so we can fire it. We're going to do that next week when it's nice and dried out and ready to go in our kiln. So what I need you to do is, if you're coming to pick up a bag on Saturday, this Saturday, we will have a table out just for the clay. And we'll have a spot, it'll be labeled, this is the clay table, and we want you to bring your clay to us. Handle it very carefully because your clay is going to be dry. So when clay gets dry, it gets very breakable. So be very careful with it. Bring your clay on Saturday. If you're picking up a bag, you can bring it right during the bag time. You can pick up your new bag and drop off your clay. So we need you to bring the clay to us on Saturday, put it down on the table outside, and then we will get it fired for you, and it'll be ready the next week for you to come and pick up. Okay, there I got my third leaf on here. Gonna kind of blend its edges in a little bit. Put its little veins back on. Okay. There we go. I kind of like my little trio of leaves. I like my little duck sitting down there. This might be a really pretty bowl to just put leaves all the way around the side. You wouldn't, and if you don't want to put a bird in the middle, you don't have to. You could just make a leaf bowl. The bowls, when we fire them, will be sealed. We'll dunk them in like a white glaze. And so you'll have it all nice and sealed. You'd be able to eat out of it. You could eat ice cream out of it. You could put cereal and milk in it. You could do whatever you want. So get your bowls finished. Don't worry, you can go back. You need to give Mr. Mark a few minutes to get the video saved. It usually takes about 15-20 minutes. But then you can pull it back up after you eat lunch if you need to go back and work on it. Remember, if you're not happy with what your bowl looks like, we can just scrunch it back up in a ball and start all over again. This is a bird bath that we made last summer. I think we did this last summer, guys. Nick might have. Sophia, I don't know if you were here last summer. Any of you that have been in the studio might have made one before. Do you see inside the bowl here? Doesn't it kind of look like it's got water in the bottom of the bowl? We put a glass marble down there. So we'll dunk these. This is when somebody painted all kinds of designs, which we don't have the ability to do when we're being online like this. We're going to dunk these in, I'm thinking probably our white. So they'll be a really pretty white. But we'll drop a marble down in the bottom. So the bottom of your bowl is going to have that really cool, watery, glassy look to it. So think about how you want your bowl to finish. Remember, if you're putting anything on, like these leaves, they can't hang off too much. They have to have a lot of clay to stick to each other. The parts of the clay have to have a big area to stick to. So don't have any thin edges hanging off. Make sure your clay's not too thick. Think of Miss Ginny's fat thumb here. No bigger than that. I'm going to move here so Joey can pull the camera back out. I got to move my stool. There we go, Mr. Joey. And get your clay ready. Put your clay someplace safe. It will start getting dry because this is only Tuesday. We want you to bring it back to us on Saturday. There'll be a table outside the studio. So anytime between 11 and 3, when you normally come pick up your bags, we'll have a table out there. What you have to do, very important, what you have to do is put your name on the bottom. So before you start putting everything in your bowl, I want you to put your name on here. You can't just put your initials. We have lots of people whose initials are matching each other. So I need your whole first name. So Lydia would write out Lydia, and then she needs to put her last initial. Because we have matching first names. We have lots of Morgans. We have lots of Olivias. So put your first name on the bottom and put your last initial. And this is what's so important. You have to write neat enough that Miss Ginny can read it, okay? So put your name and your initial on the bottom, just in case. You could put a note with it with your name on it when you drop it off on our table. So Saturday you're going to drop your clay back off so we can fire them for you. Take a picture because I'm curious to see if we have ducks, if we have birds, if we have leaf bowls, if we just have design bowls. I'm curious to see what you did with your bowl. And if we've got big giant bowls or little bowls, so take a picture. Don't forget to tag us so I can see your picture.
So put that @ Idea Studio. I just got clay on my sign. Take a picture, tag us, let us know how your bowl turned out, and we'll see you on Saturday when you drop them off. Bye.